Okay, this is a planning commission meeting for Plainfield on Monday, November 18th of 2024. Present, we have Will Colgan, the chair, Jesse Cooper, Karen Story, Janice Grill, and Ariane DeBoomer. Um, so the first item of business, as it always is the approval of the minutes. So Jesse, could you make the motion to approve the minutes?
Yep, I'll make the motion.
Okay, Karen, you want to second that? All those approved? All those in
Aye.
favor? Okay.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
we're now underway. I think a few more people are going to turn up, but it will give them a minute. Um, Everybody got the copy of I did a few added updates to the zoning change document. So we're really looking at two documents here. We're looking at the adding some changes to the subdivision regulations and adding some changes to the zoning specifically in the village district. And we're going to propose that for interim adoption by the select board. I also sent out some language from the Highgate zoning that was approved, that had language that was approved for an NDA application recently, and that had to do with outdoor lighting, and it had to do with some suggestion for tree planting. And we can get on to discuss that when we later on. Uh, I guess we can just start right in. I'll admit that the two things that I have hesitancy with in the suggested changes that came from Jacob were that he suggested a, a maximum setback in the village as opposed to a minimum setback. And I put it in the changes, but I really want to just take that out. They suggested a building width of 40 feet, which makes sense, but to have a 10-foot maximum setback for side and rear yards seems crazy to me. That would limit a side yard to 10 feet. So I'm going to strike that unless anybody has any objections, and we'll see what he's going to review these documents. I think he just tossed that out to say why not. But if anybody has anything else to mention, I'm just going to delete that from the document. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. I think this, and he wanted to have the setbacks measured from the property line rather than the center of the road, which is what we do. And not all properties are surveyed, but that's sort of the new standard. Karen, you want to comment on that, or you're okay with that? It's a pretty minimum, right now the building setback minimum is 8 feet on the front. So none of the properties are like that I know of. But that's just all this is just to make it more dense in the village, the possibility, as these are minimums, not maximum.
So we go by like in forest and ag, we go by the edge of the road,
Yeah,
which is a moving target.
right. That's the issue in the village. It can be more precise versus in the rural areas. So
You can go stand in the middle of the road.
well, yeah, that all I'm relaying is Jacob's suggestion, and it's sort of, you really want to measure from the property line, is what he's saying in these dense areas.
Does it
Well,
effectively
Oh,
does it effectively change the setbacks, or is it an adjustment of the number of feet in addition to measuring from the property line?
well, his proposal is 8 feet. It was bigger than that. This is just, it's not going to change anything to existing buildings. It's just going to say if anybody wants to do infill between two properties in the village, which is, unless you tear something down and rebuild it, you can pack them in a little tighter. That's what this
Right.
lower minimum setback allows. So you can squeeze stuff in if you need to,
Right.
all pursuing the goal of higher density. So I think that's workable. I don't see a big issue with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Those, and then uh, I added the additional district standards of front yard requirements. But this has to do with, the purpose of the front yard requirement is to promote a lively neighborhood feel with and active connection between buildings and the street. The frontage area should be limited to landscaping, yard area, sidewalks, public spaces, and/or driveways that access side or rear yard parking areas. Parking area shall not be in the front yard, so you can't park your car in the front yard. So these are all sort of standard, a little tighter restrictions on the front yard usage. Did everybody get a chance to read through those and have any comment? So, other than those setbacks, the parking requirements, what else was changed?
I had a question about the lot size.
The lot size, yeah. The suggested lot size was, it was quarter acre. The initial suggestion was a 1/5 of an acre. And I think Sandy is suggesting maybe we want to go down to even a higher density, a lot area minimum. With public sewer. It's 2 acres without public sewer in the village district, but most of the village is in the district. So Sandy is thinking, at least for the NDA application and for the property that we're considering developing, a 1/10 of an acre would be useful. Sandy, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, in Montpelier, what we do is go by the smallest property, more or less, unless something's like definitely a non-conforming lot, but go by the smallest lot, which makes almost all the lots in the district conforming. And the idea is that opens up the ability to subdivide inside the village and add more infill housing. I know I had laid out the 23-acre lot with our property with 8/8 acre lots. And with the current wetland areas, we're down to about 35 to 40 lots at 1/8 acre. If they increase to 1/5 of an acre, we probably won't get enough houses on the property to make up the lots affordable. And there's some confusion about whether the PUD averages lot size over the whole property. But from what I understand, that doesn't happen in Plainfield, and I haven't had time to look at it carefully myself.
I think it does advertise, it takes the entire allowable density in the property in the current zoning. And then if you meet those guidelines of the PUD in terms of setting aside the common space and meet those other requirements, you can add 50% to that density. And that can be a 50% increase in lot size or dwelling units, multi-use units. As I read the PUD.
That satisfies the need. I'm thinking very specifically about the charrette, and you folks are thinking, the community design day, and you folks are thinking, of course, about the whole district, which is appropriate. So as long as people can make smaller lots on February 8th, then that's great.
Well, I guess the thing is, do we want to talk at 1/10 of an acre or 2/10 or 1/5 of an acre? 10 lots per acre or 5 lots per acre in the village. And it seems to me that the whole thrust of this is to increase density and the possibility of increased housing. So is there a big problem with going 1/10 of an acre as the allowable minimum? It doesn't say that that's what you have to do. It's just saying we can go down to this small a lot. And Sandy, what's a they're tenth of an acre lots in Montpelier.
Yeah,
The-
Montpelier's smallest lots are actually 3,000 square feet, which is a 14th of an acre. And I know my cousin's house next door to me is a 10th of an acre, and it's fine. He can get everything on it.
We do have we have multiple parcels in the village that are a tenth of an acre.
Oh, we do?
I'm
Okay.
seeing two on Creamery Street. We have one on Hudson. We got one that's even smaller than that behind the church. I can't remember where that little roundabout street is there. And then we got a couple that are also on Main Street that are in that same size. So, and also on the in the Upper Village. So, I mean, that's at least 7, 8 different parcels in the village right now that are that small.
Okay, so that gives me enough confidence to say we can go with a tenth of an acre as a minimum lot size. Karen, what do you think?
I'm more concerned about the parking situation.
Okay, we'll move on to that. So I just made that change to a tenth of an acre as a minimum lot size in the village district, because there already are existing lot sizes in that. Okay. I took out the maximum lot size. Want to move on to parking. Oh, actually, let me go and discuss. There's a little bit of road things. We defined a cul-de-sac in the subdivision regulation. We limited the length of a cul-de-sac in the subdivision regulations. And what else did we do that was significant? I changed all the. I took the definition, sort of the suggestion of defining. I'll just read you under cul-de-sacs shall be limited in length to 1,000 feet. Wider travel lanes and/or shoulders may be required as appropriate to road function, i.e. for on-street parking, collector, and arterial roads, or to safely accommodate shared use by bicycles. Permanent dead-end roads and cul-de-sacs shall be discouraged unless deemed necessary by the Development Review Board due to physical site limitations and safety considerations. No dead-end road shall be permitted within this suitable turnaround area terminus with a T or a Y configuration suitable to topography and preferred, but cul-de-sacs with a radius of not less than 35 feet may be considered as appropriate. So that's sort of the technical language of how to the road access in the subdivision section or the subdivision regulations. And then there are some new criteria for extensions of new roads could provide future access to adjoining parcels. This is specifically for subdivision. Coordination with adjoining properties, roads and pedestrian paths should be coordinated with neighboring properties to ensure access for emergency vehicles, mitigate traffic impacts likely to result from a proposed subdivision, conserve energy, and support pedestrian circulation. And then subdivision shall provide for continuation of existing roads and sidewalks, and for extension of roads, sidewalks, and pedestrian paths to connect with adjoining properties in order to create an interconnected network of village streets and pedestrian facilities, reduce traffic congestion, and promote pedestrian circulation safety. Unless the Development Review Board determines that such extensions are undesirable and are impractical due to topographic, natural resource constraints, or other site conditions. So the impetus is to help connect it to the village unless it has undue restrictions or expense. Any comments on that?
Will, can you just tell us where you are in
Oh,
this
I'm in the
document?
subdivision in their subdivision with changes document 11/18/2024, page 15. That's where I added that. It's all the stuff in yellow. 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, 15.
4, 5, and 6, that's under section 460.
Yes.
Yeah,
You see that language?
Yeah.
460.
Yeah, it allows the development review board to not do those things, but it asks that the design try to connect the subdivision with the surroundings.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we should move on to parking. And let me get to that section. There were two sections of parking. And one of them was in the commercial site plan review in the zoning document. If I can get over there. So we're gonna, and it's the same language in both places. That was a suggestion to put it in the residential section also. So, oh, one thing I did is in the zoning in section 3.12. Number 2 is a contiguous parcel of land in the town may be subdivided into no more than 4 lots in any 12-month period, unless in conjunction with a PDU. And we've discussed this a while, and we were going to take it out in the other zoning, and I crossed it out in this zoning. That the prohibition of 4 lots in 1 year in a subdivision. It seems if we wanted to do a comprehensive subdivision, that would be difficult. It would also be difficult to enforce, as I've been told over and over again. So I struck that out. Is there any objection to that? We've been trying to get rid of that. What's
Quick
that?
question.
Yeah.
There's a question that came up about some kind of prohibition on merging lots that have already been subdivided and without DRB approval or something.
You should be able to merge lots. I don't think that we
I think there was a question around if, with the village expansion, how it would be I mean, I guess I don't know if this just is particular to that area or what the position is of the board, but what seems not so desirable, if somebody purchased 2 lots up there because they wanted to use a bigger house or something, is there some way of controlling that? It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Unless Karen, go ahead.
I don't know how to raise my hand on Zoom.
Oh, you just jump around. We'll see you.
I brought this up because I own a piece of property and Callis is a subdivision, and part of the decision is that you couldn't buy 2 lots and merge to make a bigger lot. And
Yeah.
so I was thinking that it wouldn't necessarily go in the subdivision regulations, but it might be a condition of whatever. Because I think if the goal is to have smaller lots, then having someone buy 4 lots and merge them together and make a bigger lot kind of defeats the purpose. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't see it as probably part of this subdivision regulations as much as it might be part of whatever the homeowners association, if it's a PUD or it's a condition of the decision.
I think from a hold on, Aaron, you're kind of breaking up on the sound.
Sorry.
I have
a deed
I would-
restriction?
Yeah, I was gonna make a quick comment on that. I don't know that you'd want to put it in your subdivision regulations because that you might also want to merge 2 lots together for the purpose of like a daycare. So I don't know if you'd want to do that at that point. I've suggested that the town get some legal advice about how to prioritize buyers. For instance, people who lost their homes during the flood, people who need affordable lots, people who will be full-time residents. Those are all things that there should be a way for the town to prioritize that they get the lots first. And putting some timeline on being able to merge lots might be that's a solution. But I think it is a very real threat that someone could buy multiple lots. For instance, well, a developer may try to buy 4 or 5 lots and put 4 or 5 houses on them and not merge them together. And I think the town should talk about all of these scenarios. But that, again, I think it's more for specific property than for a subdivision regulation.
Yeah, and
That makes sense.
the state, and Sandy, my wife can comment, but for tax purposes, if 2 properties become merged. So they can still remain separate deeds, but for tax purposes, they're a single
My uncle stopped that law. He's was a land lawyer, and
Yeah.
there are 2 properties here that he wanted me to take the other one, and I think that law got changed. I don't think they merge into one anymore.
For tax purposes. They still have 2 deeds.
Okay, but yeah.
Or just for valuation.
Okay, well, she would know better than me.
Still couldn't build. If there were 2 properties and you didn't merge them to make them one property, you couldn't build a house in the middle, on both properties. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, and that's probably an unusual circumstance.
but anyway, so.
Yeah.
And am I understanding right? You're saying that within Plainfield zoning regulations, there's no cases where someone can buy 2 properties and merge them?
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
But you can either merge them, or you can keep them 2 separate deeds, but for tax valuation purposes, they're treated as one.
And so the discussion is on where would the restriction to merge be?
Yeah, and I don't think I mean, we don't have a restriction to merge. We can't, they stay merged. They stay separate until the property owner wants to merge them, which they can do. It's like buying, if you have 4 acres and you want to buy another acre to make 5, you can merge that acre into 5. You wouldn't want to restrict that.
Right.
And so I'm not sure. I'm
This
not sure.
why was relevant to the conversation.
Yeah, it's all right. It's a bit of a tangent. I withdraw. I think Sandy's we can address this with the sale. It's not germane to the regulations. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I think that's something maybe in this case, this specific case, there could be some HOA fee restrictions, which there probably should be about merging in this specific development. And if it ends up being a PUD, you can certainly do that.
I think we want to be careful. I don't think this project that I've been working on is going to have a homeowners association.
Okay.
I think we're trying to do a traditional subdivision where the roads become public.
Okay.
And no fees, just to be really clear. Okay.
Okay. So the parking, what I added in the zoning was in 2.6 under D, plans for safe traffic circulation and space for adequate parking to be located at the side or rear of the building where possible. Parking requirement may be waived by the DRB for all permitted and conditional uses in the village district. Non-residential parking area is to be located, I should change that grammar there, is to be located to the rear and side of the buildings unless otherwise permitted by the DRB under conditional use review. So it wants to have the parking in the rear or the side, but the DRB can't waive that parking. All the parking requirements can be waived by the DRB if they need to be. So Karen, what are you thinking about the parking requirements?
So what's happened by moving multi-dwelling buildings into a permitted use?
Yes.
There won't be a DRB oversight. Okay, because I can permit a multi-use. So then I have to.
No, wait, I think where I was just reading is, that's under commercial site plan review. but I also stuck that language in the residential review. And but even then, if you put a multi-unit in, and you can't put the parking because there is none, the DRB can waive the requirement.
So say someone comes in and they want to do a multi-use building, right? Multi-dwelling, and they don't have 1.5 parking spots because you have to have. So then I would refer it. Sorry, I'm tired. Refer it to the DRB for a variance.
Yeah,
for parking.
yeah, I'm not sure if it's a variance.
Maybe
yeah.
a waiving of it.
Yeah, the waiving of the parking requirement is what it would be. And then I got to make sure we have that ability. But basically, yeah, it's like I mentioned in the email, the French building in Montpelier, they put all those 20 apartments in and there was no parking anywhere near it. And they just said, if there's no parking, you'll have to have no parking, but they'd rather have the apartments and the housing than limit it to available parking.
Right. Well, so that's why I was thinking that maybe adding that language also into the parking language where it
Yeah.
says the DRB can, like, why can't I find it? I'm tired. In the parking section, at the very end, it says the parking requirements may be waived by the DRB for businesses in the commercial district. I would like it to be similar to what was in the other one, so it's kind of clear in that it can be for residential and businesses in the village district.
Whether it's a conditional or permitted use. Got it.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I don't know. Typically, I'm not going to do a commercial site plan review for a multi-use dwelling in the village because it's now a permitted use. So I wouldn't be going through the usual steps that you went through before. It won't be a conditional use hearing.
Yeah, so here, under general regulations in the village district on page, in the village district at the bottom, additional district standards after the front yard requirement is for proposed developments with dual frontages parking. So I could change that for proposed multifamily housing parking areas shall be located inside the yard area unless a shared parking plan that reduces the overall number of parking spaces by at least 50% is made acceptable by the zoning administrator, or the parking requirement can be waived by the DRB. So it asks for parking. It says the zoning administrator has some leeway, and then ultimately the DRB can waive that.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay. I'm
So
making
when
that
do you
change.
think we're going to come into, when are we going to start having these as our regulations, you think?
Well, ideally, I'm going to send the changes we're making and any more suggestions by Jake or Nikki to make the changes meet the requirement of an NDA application. I hope to have that this week. We may call another meeting of the Planning Commission, a special meeting, maybe next Monday to approve. I'll send out all those changes in a good document. We're not going to vote to approve them tonight because they're not final with the suggestions that we need from this regional planning and Jacob. So once we do that, we get 15 days. We send them to the select board. They have warned them for 15 days. They hold a public hearing and they can adopt them. So we're mid-December, late December is hopefully what we got. So
Well,
that's,
I guess I was just curious because I have a violation letter I have to put out.
yeah, if you can wait a month.
So the parking is a real big issue. I'm talking about the former Plainfield hardware store.
Yeah,
So anyways,
well, I'm thinking that if we add this condition that the part, we've never been able to get enough parking to meet the requirements of the zoning, and the DRB always should have the ability to waive those rights, the way Montpelier had to essentially not worry about downtown parking to get apartments down there.
okay.
Okay. Any other thoughts from the planning commission members? George, you want to weigh in a little bit, or?
Hi, Will. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for doing all this work. I am concerned with what I'm hearing about the minimum lot size. So for the village, you're saying that with the revised regulations, it would all of a sudden be 1/10 of an acre,
as the
one
minimum,
fifth of an acre, right?
yeah, I mean, there are, as Aaron said, there are already multiple places in town that are that small lots.
But um, I'm concerned in that some in the village are that size, sure. But I'm concerned particularly how this could apply to the 23-acre parcel for the village expansion, in that now you've set 1/10 of an acre as the size that I'm trying to figure out the wording, must be allowed in the buildable area. And yeah, there's a current proposal that would not utilize all that, but if that current proposal fell through and someone else stepped up, they might push that to the limit, and you would have to approve it. So that is a great concern to me, because that all of a sudden is a density beyond which I was conceiving you would even consider going to. That's
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
hearing.
Yep. Well, I mean, we're weighing how to get more housing in to the village area where it belongs versus, what would be, too much density. So I don't know. Janice, I see a hand waving.
Hi, yeah, I was also a little shocked to hear Sandy say that the only way to afford the lots, to make them affordable, would be to have 35 or 40 or more, when we have sort of been told that they were going to be quarter-acre lots, and that there would be, around 30, which already seemed extremely dense to many of us. The question that I have about this process that's going on right now is, are you expediting these zoning changes just for this NDA so that this application can go through?
Well, we're
And
making.
what gives you the sort of, I don't know, authority or reason to do that at this point?
The reason we're doing it is because I mean, there are multiple reasons to move this forward. And one of them is we lost a lot of housing in the village. We shouldn't, and we probably can't put it back where it was. So we lost a significant section of the village, and we want to replace that. We want to, have people the access to housing options in the town of Plainfield, in the village. And one of the ways we can do that is utilizing this property. And if we get this neighborhood development area approval, it makes that process a little easier.
Yeah, I understand that,
Okay.
and I am sensitive and sympathetic to that desire and to the whole idea of building density, near town centers. However, this area is not yet designated as part of the village, and there's a reason for that. And there's sort of a strange circular logic that concerns me. In the application for the neighborhood development area, we have to sort of justify the fact that this new development would be in keeping and in character with the surrounding village. But then once the designation is given, we no longer have to make it in keeping with the surrounding village. And the other aspect is that even if it were in keeping with the surrounding village, the lower village, it certainly is not in keeping with the other side. So, we're saying that we want to make this area that is not the village into the village, and then zone it accordingly without really evaluating whether such a thing would be appropriate for that area.
Yeah, well, that's true. The property is in the village district right now. So it's covered by the existing zoning as it is. So what we're doing in this case is increasing the density in the village and the property that is bounded by the current village district. So we're not expanding the village district. We're modifying it to allow higher density.
I'm sorry, but you're also taking away the regulations for people to appeal design. Otherwise, why do you need the NDA at all? I mean, if it's already fine and it's all already zoned to do what we want, why do we need the NDA?
Well, a couple of reasons are you get some of the financing options, some of the bonding options become more available if you meet some of these guidelines.
Well, sure, but is there not a loss?
A loss of
public scrutiny, community appeal options?
Well, this what we're proposing will go before the select board. It will have a public hearing. And then if they adopt it as interim zoning, they're 5%, if 5% of the registered voters in the town sign a petition, they can vote to rescind the interim zone. And then we're going to have event later in the spring at town meeting, we'll incorporate another zoning revision that basically includes flood language and stuff. So, but in terms of this property, the public input is the select board public hearing, and certainly you can voice your thoughts at that, and then if you can get 5% of the registered voters in Plainfield, it's like 15 people, and you can put it up to a public vote. So there are, and then the whole process of the development itself has its own series of appeal processes and hearing processes.
Yeah, but the NDA specifically countermands some of those.
The only thing the NDA does in terms of public input, as my understanding is, it doesn't have Act 250 appeal because the qualifications that the zoning is required to have to meet the NDA approval would be the same as the Act 250 standards.
There's one other line in the regulations, which is specifically about obviating or not allowing for appeal about whether the development is in character with the surrounding area. It says that once it's been, and I don't understand what this means, and maybe you do, but it says that once it's been designated by the board, and I don't know who the board is,
NDA designation.
As within the character, then that's it. And then nobody can then appeal it and say it's not.
As far as the character
Yeah, that's what it says. It's a line in the guidelines.
In the NDA guidelines.
It's pretty explicit, but I don't know. You know, just seems odd.
Will, can you speak at all to this notion of character? Because it seems like a very vague concept to me. I feel like people could say my neighborhood is defined by any number of qualities that would be considered character. How is that used in other kinds of developments or regulations?
Well, you're quite right. It's pretty vague. I mean, in terms of this property's proximity to the village, is that it's close enough to the village to be considered a pertinent and has character of the village in it, but you can also, you could look at this property and say it's been an agricultural field and it's more like East Hill than it is to the village. The town has to kind of come to that conclusion. In other words, the town, through a series of public forums, the town has to decide, we want to keep the East Hill portion of this viewing East Hill, or we can have the housing that we think we need. I see one person, Sandy's got her hand raised. Sandy, you want
Sorry,
to?
yep, sorry about that. So I just wanted to add that the NDA process is not kind of bypassing Act 250. It's almost a pre-review, if you will, that all of the criteria like natural resources and steep slopes, etc., they get reviewed before the NDA is approved, and then the town has to show that it has adequate regulatory tools. And I think there is an appeal process in the Plainfield regulations. So it's just that if it gets appealed, it doesn't go to the environmental court, which I've participated in before, both as a citizen and as an architect for a developer, and it's a pretty unpleasant process. So it just makes less bureaucracy, if you will. And my experience is that it's a reasonable compromise, but it's not an abdication of regulation. I don't think the state of Vermont would give up having some oversight, or let's say guardrails for development in Vermont. And about character, it actually is quantified in ways by looking at where the setbacks are, particularly on the front yards, size of buildings, heights of buildings, and Plainfield is hitting those typical character definitions. Some towns like Montpelier go as far as to require front porches. And they can require that windows are taller than they are wide. It can go into all kinds of details if one wants to, but typically character is defined by these basic zoning concepts. Thanks.
Sandy, could you speak a little bit to the density, we started the meeting at a fifth of an acre and we've doubled that, and that seems to be a concern to George and Janice. So you want to speak a little bit to that? Because I'm not that experienced in terms of really what size lots are common and where they're common.
I'm glad to do that. And George and I talked a little bit about this up on the hill Sunday. It is the village district. At some point, someone decided the 23-acre parcel was part of the village, and the character is predominantly defined by the downtown village. The difference between a fifth of an acre and an eighth of an acre or a tenth of an acre, while it's physically twice as much. Well, actually, I would say, yeah, twice as much. It's not an unreasonable lot size. There are a lot of lots in Montpelier that are 50 by, I think, a tenth of an acre is 45 by 100 feet. And just as a sort of round number reference. And there are a lot of lots in Montpelier, the whole neighborhoods that are smaller than that. Up in Burlington, where my kids live, the new North End, they're much smaller than a tenth of an acre. So it's not unreasonable. It is definitely smaller than the East Hill Road lots and the other extensions out of the village. But I think my sense, what I've been told from the beginning, was the idea was to locate a new or relocate or locate a new neighborhood that had the feeling of the village in all senses, even including what home offices and people having accessory dwellings on their land if they want. It should feel villagey, not suburban. But really, I mean, I'm not a resident of Plainfield, so you folks get to decide what does villagey look like.
George, yeah, go ahead.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Sandy. I think you misspoke when you said that 50 by 100 is about a tenth of an acre. That's
That's a ninth of an acre. So 45 by 100 is a tenth of an acre.
45 by 100 is a tenth of an acre.
Yeah, an acre is 44,000 odd square feet.
Yeah.
So,
45,360. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a big shift to make. We already were up to 1/5 of an acre for the village. All right. I wish the community was being asked more broadly on this, and I know you sent out an announcement, but it's a big change. I think that I wish we had more input going on this, and it's not much fun to go through appeals of interim zoning regulations and stuff like that. Do we all have to spend our time doing stuff like that? I just wish more people were involved in making this decision.
So if we went back to the 1/5 of an acre, Sandy, how would that's a minimum that the NDA could live with. And it seems like if there's hesitancy at this point in the application, maybe when we come back to the select board hearing, we can hear a little more about that, and maybe the steering committee can do a little more asking about, try to get some public input. But would the 1/5 of an acre severely impact what you're planning on?
Yep, it would.
Okay.
But if the PUD requirements apply, then that's not a problem.
Well, I think you could do it as a PUD.
Well, and the other thing is, it's not all or nothing. An 1/8 of an acre is kind of in between, or a 1/7 of an acre. Maybe there's some compromise that's possible without too much upset.
Janice, you got your hand?
Could you explain what the PUD, what that means? I didn't understand.
A PUD is a provision in the zoning. It's been in there for years. It's called Plan Unit Development. What it does is it asks in any subdivision that if let's say you have 20 acres or 10 acres and you could put 50 lots on it, or you at 10 acres. I usually use it in the agricultural area where you have 20 acres in 5-acre zoning. You could have 4 lots, but if you determine that you want to set aside some common areas and meet certain guidelines, you could increase your lot number by 50%. So you could put 6 lots. So in this particular application, you could increase the number of lots from 5 per acre to 15, or 1/5 of an acre to 7 by 50%. So if we keep the current zoning in the village at 1/5 of an acre, and this project is done as a PUD, the density makes it so that point where you have enough lots to make them affordable exists. If you have a few lots for this proposal, they're too expensive, and what you have is McMansions on the hill.
But doesn't it end up being the same thing? I mean, I guess it's very new to me, but
no, it doesn't do the same thing, because the PUD is essentially saying areas within this development have to be something other besides housing. If you just had a 1/10 of an acre maximum zoning, it could all be housing lots, whereas a PUD sets aside common areas that are not housing. So what it does is it increases the density in certain areas, but allows for open common space in others. That's the purpose of the PUD. Karen, you got your hand up?
Yes, with the PUD, you also will have, like, the land that's set aside is restricted for future development. So basically, a large portion or whatever portion of the PUD that's housing, you would have pretty much an equal, I think it's about an equal amount of land that can't be developed. So you could put a lot of houses over toward the village side and keep less houses toward the East Hill side.
Mhm.
You know, like, and I think the East Hill side has wetland there, right? So there's going to be limited development on if you were like sitting, you know, in the first part of East Hill, you have that open field and you have those two house lots, and then you have regular farmhouses for the, you know, those kind of houses. So you could keep that side to looking more rural and have the other side be more village. But it's always funny when we talk about village, because the village right now historically has been large family houses that were converted into apartments when Goddard had its heyday. And we're not going to be seeing large Victorian houses. We're going to be seeing smaller houses that are more, or just smaller houses. So it's going to be a different looking village than what I perceive the town Plainfield Village to be, because I've lived here my whole life. So
Yeah.
Aaron, you got a hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the fifth by state law under the Home Act is the minimum that we actually can do. Like, that already is the law of the land as passed by the legislature. And so, you know, along the lines of what Karen was just saying, if we want smaller houses, and smaller houses make things affordable, we have to provide small lots for those houses. I mean, it just kind of, they go together. And I do think that I would advocate for passing this with at least an eighth out of this committee. And if that goes for a larger conversation at the select board, that sounds like a fine conversation to have at that time. And maybe we can have more of the town show up for that. But I think if we don't get it out of this committee with something like that, it's going to be harder to have that conversation at the select board.
So what is I have this in digital form. What's an eighth of an acre? 0.15? Is that right?
0.1625.
125. 0.125.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put in parentheses an eighth of an acre.
Hey, I don't want to slow things down, but I had made the assumption through this all the discussions we've had about this proposed new area, that it would go through the PUD, and a substantial portion would be set aside for no development. That was my assumption, and I guess I was wrong.
Oh yeah,
with the wetland.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. With the wetland area and the slopes, there is going to be a substantial portion of this land that is not developed.
Right. But I just thought it was going through the PUD, and these things would be fixed in perpetuity.
Well, and just as a little bit of a background story, and Will is familiar with this, I went and met with the DRB many months ago to talk about a PUD, and Janice told me that it couldn't be a PUD because a PUD was effectively a condo association, and Will has since clarified that he doesn't believe that that's the case. But Janice and the DRB is not on that same page, so there's some things to reconcile there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought the same as you, George, that might be the way to do it. And I went and came in this very room and met with them, and they said, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah, we do got to clarify that, but it says clearly in the zoning that a PUD can be single lots or common ownership. So let's straighten that out at some point for sure. And then in the document that I'm going to forward, I'm going to put it in as 0.125 or 1/8 of an acre. Are you comfortable with that, George? You want to?
I I guess I want to say it's not up to me. It's
Well,
an
we
improvement, but
appreciate your input. I mean, we want to
well,
listen.
I thought we were pretty dense at 1/5. I'm hearing each of your arguments the other way, but I thought 1/5 was pretty dense. It isn't the same situation as it was in the 19th century, but by the time you get some accessory dwelling units put in there over the years, they're going to be half of them might be double the density anyway. I'm smiling
Yes.
because I don't really know, but pretty
Yeah,
much you want to allow that sort of thing, right? So
yeah, you can't discourage
I-
the Home Act. Aaron, you can speak to that.
okay.
Well, the Home Act doesn't let us do anything less than a fifth, and so that's regardless of what town zoning ordinances say. A fifth is, and that just passed like, I don't know, in the last 2 years, I think maybe last year even. But one thing that I think is important to keep in mind, George, is when we go through the public design process, I know that at least in the steering committee, and I think in some conversations that even you and I have had, that having a diversity of lot sizes facilitates a diversity of things that get built in there. And so, at least in my personal opinion, having some at 1/8 of an acre is a good thing. I do not think they should all be 1/8 of an acre. I think there should be some diversity that's in there so that we have some different sizes of dwellings that are occurring in this area. But how that gets drawn out is going to happen more in the public forum. But I think encouraging people to think about different options or having options is a good idea.
But if I can back out to beyond the big field across the street from me, and think about the larger issue, this means that every developer that might choose to come into town, and maybe they will more, they haven't in the past, obviously, is going to want their minimum size. And so you reduce it for today and we're stuck with it forever. That's what I'm thinking. And do we want that in every parcel that might be proposed for development? You're sort of stuck with it.
I guess I'm really coming at this question, and I both live across the street from that field, and on the planning commission, I think I'm coming at this a lot from the point of view of the town plan, which we, updated and was passed in 2021. And the town plan of Plainfield, in a lot of different ways, advocates very strongly for increasing development within the village, with the recognition that by doing that,
Right.
you can continue to provide additional housing, which there is a need for, and it's inherently responsible to then have whole swaths of the town that have much lower density requirements. You have a rural residential district that's outside of the village, and then even further out, you have the rural district where there's even much bigger open areas of forest or field that are allowed. And I think that within the village of Plainfield, the lower village is already developed. And people could continue to infill, and that would allow for more housing and further increased density. It would mean more people around, people possibly, going in and using businesses locally, making it more viable for there to be like public transportation, things like the rural transit, the bus systems, sort of have this very low level of actual usage, and all of these kind of communally used utilities and I don't know, institutions make sense in a concentrated way in the village, and we happen to live in what is zoned the village. That field looks different from the lower part of East Hill Road, and I recognize that too. We could all subdivide our properties and build more houses on our already seemingly small properties according to the zoning regulations of Plainfield. So I think my instinct is to say, let's encourage higher density in what is now the village. And then I think if we make that proposal as the planning commission, which I see as sort of the stewards of the town plan, then in the select board process, there would be the opportunity for any number of people to come and have this as a broad community conversation. I think right now it's really quite a small number of us, 3 of which of us are on the planning commission. And I think that I read the town plan of Plainfield as saying we should be building more housing densely in the village. And this is an opportunity to do that.
Okay. Okay, Jesse. I agree. I'm with you. Okay.
Janice?
I just think I agree also, but I think it's a question of how dense and how quickly. It's a huge jump.
Yeah, well, right now we're the jump is between a tenth of an acre and an eighth of an acre, and a tenth of an acre, a fifth of an acre is already state law. So that's an existing now. So the jump is between a fifth of an acre and an eighth of an acre because we backed off the 10. So
I get it. And again, as George said, it's not up to me. And, I have my personal interests. And I understand that. And it's just, it's going to be very different.
I guess what I would say, for guys who are thinking about feeling that this is not a good thing, I think what we're proposing is really a proposal. And once we submit it to the select board, I would advocate for you guys to, start a discussion on Front Porch Forum and say, hey, Plainfield, we want you to recognize this is happening. Here's the change that's being proposed. And then people can weigh in on it in that kind of public forum. And then in a more process-oriented way, they could then show up to the select board and advocate for a position on it. But I guess I would suggest that we submit, sure, call it a tenth of an acre as a draft, as a proposal that can then be part of a wider public discussion.
Karen, you got any thoughts? I mean, we're negotiating between a couple of numbers here.
To me, the problem is I haven't seen the draft of like whoever's putting together what this development's going to look like. Like, I'm trying to see it in my head, which I can't, and without, like, what would a bunch of eighth of an acres or fifth of an acre actually look like on a piece of paper?
Yeah, there's that, but George's point is it's also a regulation for the entire village district. It's not just this one thing that may turn out one way.
Once upon a time, someone decided that was in the village district.
It is in the village district.
I know,
but yeah, right.
The districts are kind of weird because they change over time. So
they do.
So, anyways,
I mean, but for what it's worth, my sense is that a developer would not take this as an opportunity to build a bunch of tiny houses. My sense is that a developer who buys that property would probably split it into the most profitable lot sizes and build probably larger houses that are much more expensive. I don't think it guarantees that the trend is towards lots and lots of very tiny houses. I think that's actually unlikely.
Well, what we've gone round and round. We got to make at least a call on the proposal, because right now we're just writing a proposal to go to further public hearing. So, and it's kind of up to the planning commission to make this proposal with public input that we greatly appreciate. So, Jesse, Karen, what do you think? Stick with the state standard, or step it down to an eighth, or step it down to a tenth? What, Jesse, you could make a motion. We could do this.
I mean, I guess I'm gonna make a motion for the tenth of the acre.
Okay,
I feel like advocating for higher density.
okay.
I
Karen,
can
Yep.
visualize that 45 by 100 lot size enough to say, yes, I am interested what people will do with that. So I'm going to propose tenth of an acre lot size in the village.
okay. Any seconds or any, we need a second before we can discuss it, if I recall my Robert Rules of Order. So Karen, can you at least second the motion?
I'll at least second it.
Okay, now we can discuss it. So which means Jesse's in favor of it. Karen, what do you think?
I'm not convinced to go that small.
Okay.
I'm more inclined to, do the middle of the ground thing of the one.
The eighth of
the
an
eighth.
acre.
What would the eighth of an acre's dimensions be? Well, while I'm thinking about it, what's that dimension?
George is working his calculator.
So,
He's good.
I'm seeing spaghetti lots in my head.
100 by
I
50.
think there's a minimum width lot size.
It would be 50 feet wide by 113 feet deep.
The rectangle.
Just another spaghetti lot.
Well, that's a rectangle.
No, that's not a spaghetti lot. If you have a house, I mean, I'd be glad to draw it for people, but if you have a house that's like 18 feet wide, which is a room plus, it's a traditional Greek revival side hall entrance where you have a stair and a hallway and then a living room on the side, so 18 feet wide. And then that would give you 15 feet or 16 feet on either side of the house facing, on the side setbacks. And then most houses are, say, 35, 40 feet long. There would be in a 10-foot front yard. So there'd be 50 feet with an eighth of an acre, there'd be 63 feet in the backyard, of which maybe 20 by 24 is a garage. So there'd be 30 feet of backyard.
Yeah, I would agree that a lot that small, you can't make a spaghetti lot, or you wouldn't even be able to walk down it. It can only be so narrow and fit a building of any size on it, right?
I think so, yeah.
It's pretty small. And please reassure me that we now have regulations in place that all such lots must be done by a survey, right? I mean, that must have been the case for a long time, but you're going to have some property disputes with lots that small. So there better be a licensed surveyor laying out every single lot.
Yes, if it's done as a subdivision, if it's done as a single lot subdivision, you wouldn't need to do that. But as a two or more lots or larger, you do need to have a surveyor. But somebody in the village could stake out a single lot. I don't think we require surveys for single lots.
Well, okay, maybe it's something to take up next time you're starting revisions to your zoning regs, because
We are
really,
doing.
as lot size gets tiny,
Yes.
the conflicts can go up. But that's not what you're here to discuss tonight, I know.
Yeah, but a good point.
I used to work as a surveyor,
Yeah.
and when we laid out we'd lay out condominiums, and we didn't just lay out the lot, we had to lay out the building corners because the lots were so small that the slightest mistake would put you in violation of the zoning. So
That's a good point. So back to the motion we're discussing. What do you think, Karen? There are only
it's
three of us.
45 by 100, 45 by 100, and the other one was what? Something
Fifty.
by
50 by 113.
not a whole lot of difference, is there?
No, not to my.
Nope. We're just
And
talking about 2.5 feet on each side of.
You'd have to
two and a
do
half feet on each side of the house.
You'd have to do a pretty deep study of like the existing lots in the village in order to figure out which ones could even feasibly, subdivide or add a house, and if so, where, and what would it be shaped like. It would be pretty exhaustive. And I think by making it smaller, you're allowing for a greater range of options for different types of lots and different opportunities. If it came down to a few square feet for one lot, that made it possible, as opposed to if the regulation was, a few square feet smaller or larger, sorry, then it does seem small to me. I guess I'm advocating for increasing density in a more general sense, and I guess I can get my head around the 1/10. But it is a little arbitrary, and I admit that.
Got to have some number.
Just if folks think about the housing, that's where the old hardware store was, and then after that, as you go towards Maple Fields, most of those lots on that riverside of Route 2 are 1/10 of an acre. Just as a reference point, there's like 5 in a row. Maybe one's 0.11, another one is 0.13. But like they're all kind of right. That's a good example of where in the village that's all at. It's built at that density already.
But smaller than what we now allow, so I don't think you would get houses that actually looked like that.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
The houses would have to be smaller, or they'd have to be pushed further back on the lots.
Yeah.
Okay, Karen, what do you think?
We should just call the question, get it over.
Okay, I can do that. So the motion that Jesse made is for the lot size area minimum in the proposed interim zoning to be 1/5 of an acre or 0.20 lots per acre.
Well,
Right?
Kevin,
No, excuse me, 0.1 lots per acre.
Yeah.
Yep. I was just reading from the thing. I'm sorry. So I'll read that again. Jesse made the motion to have the lot size minimum as 1/10 of an acre per lot, or 0.10 acre per lot. So all those in favor of that motion? Karen, you're gonna vote, or?
I'm opposed.
Okay, well, I'm gonna vote for it, in the sense that, I think as a point of discussion, we can keep it moving. So in terms of this, and we can research a little more things, and if we need to, one thing I would suggest is do a little outreach for people in the village and see what they feel like. Sandy, if you wanted to like put together just a drawing of what a reasonable house lot on 1/10 of an acre looks like, that would help.
I sure will.
Okay.
I sure will.
Okay. So I guess it's getting a little late. I'm gonna, I think we went through most of does anyone else have any other comment on some of on the revisions? Because I'm just gonna forward it to Nikki at the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, and Jacob to have at the Vermont, whatever that Department of Housing and Community Development, who is in charge of the NDA, to have their input. And then we'll have as soon as I get that back, I'm going to warn another meeting.
Will,
yep.
Sorry, when you reach out to the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission,
Yep.
will you ask them if they have any suggested guidance on 1/5 versus 1/10?
Sure.
And we can revisit that question at the next
Sure,
meeting.
they'll go 1/10. Because the whole motion of all the planning and housing is to increase density where it's already dense. They're all in favor, but I'll get their input, and I'll also try to get a little idea of what other towns are doing in terms of how dense. You know, what is Marshfield doing? What is Calais doing? What are those places doing? So we'll have that information at the select board hearing, or maybe at our next planning commission meeting.
Yeah, I would be happy to revisit that at the next planning commission meeting.
Yeah, and it may be,
we just didn't think to consider. I'd be happy to revisit it.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts, George or Janice? Okay. We'll do a little more research. And once again, we've just approved changing in some language that we're going to submit for some review by the Regional Planning Commission. Okay, a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I'll put some minutes down. I'm recording this and I can post it on the town website. I hope, if I remember how to do all that different stuff. Okay. Thanks everybody. Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thanks, Jesse, for coming down and Arian to help out with the technology. That might
Yeah,
come
We
in-
got it.
that
We
might
figured
come
it
in-
out.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
See ya.
See ya.